Hey, Kindlech. Here to God willing, go weiter in this week's mimer from Torah Ohr on Torah Vayeira. Learning to bind ourselves to God, give pleasure to God, haste and redemption. Let's go do something good, help another Jew, teach another Jew, give tzedakah, whatever it is. Let's make God happy, make the Rebbe happy. Further his malchus, do what we have to do. The Rebbe loves us so much, we have to also keep in mind what is godless, and then the shibud that we have to him, that we've chosen to have to him. Keep that in mind. Be good soldiers and face forward and do what we have to do. Okay, so in terms of learning, we're saying that when Hashem made the Simsim Rishon, it's kind of like when a person is thinking about something and stops thinking about it and goes into the recesses of his mind. That's the good model for Simsim Rishon. Yeah, it's still there, and it's accessible. For the time being, it's hidden. So to speak, that's how Hashem made the first Simsim. Then sent out the Kav, which we didn't talk about very much, but we said the way things are nispash from his Shem, his Shmoy, or his Or, which were more or less interchangeable, those are my words, showing his pashtus and Gilui, like a ray of a sun leaving the sun. It's in the sun also, it shines in the sun, doesn't have any identity there, but its Indian is his pashtus and Gilui, and the way it expresses itself, this is Or. So too, the way Hashem manifests himself in the world, it comes from, so to speak, his name, that it gives a certain type of expression that could be morphed into many different styles of expression like we see around us, a tree, a house, whatever we see, and come up with all the myriads of creatures that we see in front of us. So, we're talking about the difference between, I believe, the first Simsim, and the difference between Atzilus and Bria. Let's just make sure. We call the spheros like Or because they emanated from Hashem and they are revelations of Hashem. So we call when the light's included in the source an empty space, because the light's hidden, and this hiddenness, it's a lack of a light until it doesn't really get a name at all. It's when that idea is in the back of your mind, you're just not aware of it. It might as well not exist. It's there. It's different than something you've never learned. That I can't tickle your brain and pull it back out. But in a certain sense, it's the same. They're both very, very far removed. They're not on the front screen. They're hidden in the distance. One, I just got to give you a tickle and it'll come back. The other one, someone won't have to teach it to you. But that's why we call it an empty space. It's almost as if it doesn't exist. When Hashem pulls the light into himself, so to speak, although he still fills everywhere, it's as if the Chochmah doesn't exist. It's as if the Chochmah of Atzilus doesn't exist. And not even the way we describe Hashem's Chochmah, which is obviously infinitely beyond anything we could think of any way we could think of defining Chochmah. Even if we try to Hashemicize the word Chochmah and explain it's completely different than our Chochmah, or even different than Chochmah of Atzilus, even this is completely hidden as if it's a non-entity. It doesn't have a name. Not even a potential, until it comes down many, many levels. We said that the eyes are the source of the Kalim. It's an interesting idea. You can't help but miss the connection between eyes and light, and eyes and Gili, and eyes and Ishpashtus. See what that means? And once the eyes are the source of the Kalim, in order that it should come on them a name, a creation, such as wise, or a certain type of wisdom. Because then, once it's revealed, once it's seen, once it exists outside its source, then there's the power to enliven whatever state we're talking about. Then it comes out that this potential to enliven this particular state becomes a source of a source to Chochmah. So now it has a name. Now that something's come out of it, I can look at what's come out, I can trace it back to its source. Before it came out, there just wasn't anything to talk about. It was just, there were no worlds, there was no this or no that. You couldn't have a relationship with the Almighty. Since he contracted himself and made something that we could recognize, we could see, the Dispashas and Gili, now we can sort of trace our way back to him and figure out it has a source. But if he hadn't hidden himself in the first place, we could have never found him because we would have been lost in his vast expression. But he hid himself so that there could be ultimately a revelation. He sent the light down that we could see, and then we could reason and cogitate and figure our way back to him and have a real relationship with him. It's a much greater revelation than we had before. Before we were basking in the light. We didn't have identity. We didn't have any. We were just part of it. We didn't have a way to appreciate it. There was no us. Now, not only can we appreciate it, and we can feel it, we can identify it, we can think about it, we can talk about it, we can explain it to others, we can enjoy it. We can really almost make it ours, like our God. Before we were just part of God. It would be like our God, Jewish people. Or, Shem, man, Shem's everywhere. Shem's in everything. Jews and non-Jews too. He's enlivening us all, and he actually loves us all. So don't be confused about that. And everyone has a path to redemption through the Torah. You don't have to look anywhere else. There are the 7 mitzvahs b'nai Noah for all of creation, and the person who does those with the proper intent has a big piece of redemption and can dance at the holy party. Alright, so no one should be confused about that. And the whole concept of Simsum, that it should come down and it should descend, whether in a circular way or in a straight way, and the curtain of the highest worlds, in order that there should be other very, very high infinite worlds, talking about Ak, Akudim, Nakudim. Everything's included in Keser of Atzilus. All the when you get to Keser of Atzilus, all that counts, which is the intermediary to enliven the 10 spheres of Atzilus. So again, the take-home message seems to be it all comes from God. We're talking a little bit how He makes creation. There's one other thing I wanted to bring out. I did say that. Maybe it was from the previous paragraph. We talked about that Atzilus was created through a Simsum, and that Bia was created through a Parsa. It's just something I wanted to bring out. Alright, let's see if we can't do the next paragraph. What do we have a take home for this paragraph? Everything comes from a God. He hides it so that we can be part of it, and once He sends it out and we get it, we can look back, figure out where it came from, and this is our one and only path to connect to Him and have identity. It's all love. It's a chance to connect to Him and understand how He works. He gave us a Rebbe, so we can follow the Rebbe. We have an example in the world, know what we're doing, be on the good track. And yeah, if it weren't for that, we couldn't have found our way. We've never been out. We've been overwhelmed in the light. Hashem gives us room to be in us and find our way to God and realize He's everything and have it on our own terms and serve Him and all that good stuff. Ach, Indian aparsa shebein Atzilus the Bria bein Bria hulu. But let's talk about the curtain a little bit. That's between Atzilus and Bria and the lower worlds. Well, there like Moshe come over Rav Shirot Tzalaz B'Yosef Gadol Talmud Shein Talmud Yochel Kablu B'Tzarek B'Hamshil B'Hamshilu B'Derek Moshe B'Chida Kamo Mishlei Shlomo Shmarcha Meisha Zara Shehi Mashal Nimshal Shemadaber B'Voda Zara Shehi Zara Medivrei Torah. Talk about the curtain. We're going to talk about a great sage wants to explain something to one of his students, but what he wants to explain is much too far beyond his students to give it over raw or the way the sage understands it. So he has to explain it to him a way of parable and analogy, as Shlomo often did, and he used a mashal of a foreign woman to help understand the concept of avodah zorah, that someone was being strange towards the words of Torah. He was like abandoning or being a harlot, so to speak, towards Torah. We should learn Torah. We should have strength. We should have courage. Shouldn't be any harlotry of any kind amongst the Yidden. Whether it's harlotry, God forbid, from Torah or other types, but we should be strong and serve Hashem and focus on this Torah and love each other and do what we have to do. So let's see what we got here. So this is going to represent the curtain. A great sage trying to explain something to a student and having to use an analogy. Oftentimes we'll use an analogy to explain a very high idea. Same to explain a very high concept and high idea. Same thing here. This is the idea of the curtain. And the mashal often will be discussing a different, can't say a different concept. Maybe we could say that. The analogy is discussing a different set of circumstances, a different concept that's not really touching on the... Shlomo wanted to talk about avodah zarah. Instead he talked about a woman. They're very different things, but he was able to bring out a certain point. So you're talking about other concepts than what you actually truly, the true intellect that you want to speak about. Well, Yado, but only through this analogy, Yuvan Asechel, he could understand. Apparently, if Shlomo had tried to teach the people straight about avodah zarah, it wouldn't go. But about a foreign woman, this they understand, and they can reason out the same idea with the foreign woman applies to avodah zarah. That's why he speaks about other things. That's why it's sufficient. I'm not sure exactly how to read mafsiko here. Yeah, somehow it helps him. In Parsa have mafsik. That's why he interrupts into other things. So too this interrupting curtain. That it's a curtain and a screen that separates between two separate things. Shalom, inyan atzilis. It doesn't have to do with atzilis. Hasham hahachma hi be'ofen acher mahus acher, because in atzilis hachma exists in a totally different way. She'enu me'erech ofen mahus hachma shabolam abriya. Completely different than the hachma abriya. They're both hachma, but they're completely different. So we need the curtain. The Chachma of Bria is like an analogy for the Chachma of Atzilus, a watered down version that we can wrap our heads around to try to get, okay, let's try to figure out what's a little above that. So do like anything we get, then we reason what's above it, and we keep scratching towards the ceiling, aiming towards Hashem. Get to whatever idea we can get to, we tickle the next idea that we can kind of smell, but we don't really get, and then we can even sense there's something beyond that we don't really get at all, but we sense that it's there. All the way up to God willing the Almighty, the highest heights. And then Hashem's also in the lowest depths. Hashem's everywhere. So the difference between these two chachmas is very much like this curtain. And Bria couldn't take it the way it is in Atzilus. We lessen the light so that the Keli of Bria can take it. Just like, and it'll fit its appropriate content and composition, make it a tailor-made fit. In order that it'll, Bria, but Chachma Bria could exist, or in order that the Talmud should understand what's being spoken about, what he's being taught. And even though what the student's getting is much less, it still carries the same name. So even though Bria is much less, it still carries the same name Chachma. As watered down as our Chachma might be, it still has that common connection of being connected to the Chachma above it, and eventually connected to the source of Chachma, which is the Almighty Himself. So you are always connected. There's nothing outside of God. So let's see. V'lochein nikra Bria gam kein yesh mi'ayin lefi shemechinas parsa she'or shel tolda. Einer shenolid in Torah Ohr Vayeira kamo derek mashal seifon Chadash etzel hatalmud min hamashal shama lo shal mashal hu be'inyan acher v'hu mevin mezed das rabo ari shekol zeh hu Chadash etzel Chadash adei hamashal. Isn't quite what I said. When the student gets it, it's as if you created a new knowledge because it didn't exist in him before, but it is the same knowledge. So too by Bria, it's as if you created a new entity, but it is to some degree a cut and paste of what you had before, even though it's much less. Even in the students, obviously, whatever he has is less than what the Rav has. But we call Bria a creation yesh ma'ayin. Well, wait a minute, it's not something from nothing. It came from the ray of Atzilus. It's something from something. Isn't this just cause and effect? Simple. Like Chachma and Bria, why should this be considered yesh ma'ayin? The curtain makes it yesh ma'ayin. because it's an or, it's a light of tolda, of birth. That, what does it mean? It gives birth, and it enlivens, not enlivens, it makes, it recreates, or it creates a new light of wisdom in Bria, similar to the new wisdom that was created by the student after he understood from the different concept that the Rav explained through the mashal what the Rav was really at, because trying to get to, because now he understands something totally new to him. So we still consider it something brand new. The Chochmah Bria is brand new because it had to go through a process to become a completely another thing that it could have never existed the way it was. I can't just manipulate Chochmah of Atzilus and keep it in an Atzilistic way and have it come out to be Chochmah Bria. It has to go through a qualitative change that makes it more or less a brand new entity. It's just so different from its source. We call it Yesh Mi'ayin. No, oftentimes cause and effect means a relation from cause to effect, and Yesh Mi'ayin means there's no relation cause to source. So we're saying that here, that the Atzilus is so much higher than Bria, and the only way it could be created is through this curtain, making a brand new thing. It's as if it's created something from nothing. It's so distant the relationship between cause and effect. Okay, and Ohr Zeh de Bria Ohr Chadash and Chadash Al Parsa. V'hine Hamaskil Yavin Shes Hamos Seichel Shel Rav B'derek Hamashal She'omer L'Talmud Hu Seichel Chachmaso B'Atzmuso L'Avush B'Mashal Zeh Lo B'Koch Lavad Elo B'Pom Mamish. And a smart person will understand that the hidden wisdom of the Rav that he put into the analogy that he told over to a student, it's not sure how to read this. I'm not sure here, guys. I'm going to say it's in order that all of the Rav's essential... the point we can stress. A smarty is going to know that the Rav put all of his essential wisdom and enclosed it into this analogy, and he's not just giving him a certain potential so he could figure it out. Everything he really wants to say is in the analogy. He just had to use a different vehicle. If he'd said it straight, it wouldn't have gone. So he put it in another vehicle that was more palatable to the student. But nevertheless, the ultimate point, the ultimate seichel is still in there. He's still getting everything from the Rav. So too, the little bit we understand, it's all coming from God. We are understanding God. As we learn its Torah, as we engage each other, as we learn about His mitzvahs, as we daven, every little bit, you have to know that the Rav put His essential most wisdom in there. He's trying to help us. And so too, by Chochmah Bria, it still has the essential aspects of Chochmah Atzilus, just in a very hidden way. And so our wisdom has, in a very hidden way, God's wisdom. And it all starts from there. So it's in there. It's in you. You're not looking for something foreign. You're not inventing something. It's all contained in you. It's in a different way, a cut and stamp way, a cut and paste way. But it all stems back to the source, the Almighty. And the essential Almighty's wisdom is in there. Even the tiny little bit we're able to grasp, it's still inside. So it's radiating a light, peace, and love, and happiness, and encouragement, and peace, and go forward, and a lot of good stuff. And make you feel good, feel at home, connect to the Almighty, connect to your source, connect to Creator, and all the good tzachim. And let's see what else we got. רק לפי שהעניין שהרח מלובש בו הוא שלא עניין השכל סחמסו בעצמו אלא יוצא למד שלא קניינו לכך השכל שרה ועניין שמרמז בו אין השכל היא נראית ונגלס לתלמיד אלא על פי המשל שהוא עניין אחר ומנו מסחדש לו השכל עד שנקרא אצל שכל חדש אבל מקום השכל החדש הזה במהוסו וצמוסו כבר היה לעולמים ומרמז הכל במשל. I think, as we explained already, I think I went a little ahead and didn't wait for the Rebbe to say, but yeah, it seems like we have, the Rebbe said that same idea, even though it's a different thing, it still has the essential wisdom inside when the student gets it, and he can even make it his. It's as if a brand new thing, it's going to be called his wisdom. And the Rav just found another vehicle to give it to him. And so too when it comes to the concealment and enclothing of Chachma, that Tzilas Bechinas Parsa, that's an Tzilas, that through the curtain, they also have Bechinas Chachma through the Bria to make Bria, so too. But the essential aspect of Chachma Tzilas is still there. Chachma Tzilas, Ibn Musa, it's Musa, B'Pol Mamash, and such Bechinas Parsa, Garmis Savas, Chachma de Bria, Hari Chachma de Bria, Afo Pisha, who are Chadish Mekom Kom, Var Yesh La Eza, Erech, Yachasim, Chachma de Tzilas. I might have said it a little bit too strong. Let's say the Rebbe's words, because then we can take it forever and ever, and against, not anyone should be against, but we could, if the whole world would say different, we could still know that the Rebbe knows what he's saying, so we could stand with the Rebbe and feel strong and proud. But I might have made it a little too strong, hopefully not. Let's just say what the Rebbe says here. He says that Chachma V'Tzilus, that in its essence and innermost state, it takes its innermost stuff and encloses itself in the curtain and causes that Chachma Bria should be created. And the Chachma Bria, even though it's a new light, and nevertheless it already has a certain connection and relevance with the Chachma V'Tzilus. So I was saying that the essential Chachma V'Tzilus was still present. I guess that maybe makes it as far as the Parsa, but something still has a connection. I don't know. I said the essential state was still there. I don't know if I can say that. But since the essential state was the creating force and through the curtain, and now you have this new entity, you can see the new entity must have a relation back to the creative force. Masha'im became a Simpson or in Sophlios Tzilus, Hainus Amos Or Vehedro, Ad She'ena Olav Hashem Klal, Velokim Nikra Chad, Velov Chushman. Unlike by the first Simpson of the infinite light before its Tzilus, there's really no relation to anything. Even though the pre-Simpson light created the Kesser of Atzilus and Atzilus, and you could say, look, it just came down a certain way, it still has a certain connection to where it came from. It's different. Shem made a complete void, so to speak, to use words that we can understand, and sent out a completely different light because of the contraction, and Atzilus comes from that light. This light is only possible because the first light was amazingly contracted. And the first light and this new light bear almost no comparison, other than that one could be the source of the other through contraction. So, even though Chachma Bria and Chachma V'Tzilus are infinitely different, and Chachma Bria could not take Chachma V'Tzilus the way she is on her own right, you can reason out, you can figure out there's a very strong connection one to the other. Chachma V'Tzilus creates the curtain, and now you have Bria. So I put it through a curtain, I morphed it a little bit. How different can it really be? It's infinitely different, but all that happened was one through a curtain. By the Simpson, we removed the whole initial force. Then we created a secondary force. And through the secondary force, passing through a number of levels and raisins, assuming V'Tzilus. So what you end up with is totally different. No comparison to when it was just God in His name, and everything was completely infinite, beyond space and time. So two ways of looking at source. Both sources are, so to speak, infinitely beyond their effect. But with one, you could sort of see the relation one to the other. There's still a comparison, a certain correlation. The other, there's none. Only because of God's infinite ability and goodness that He's able to do these things. The other thing is part of a curtain. I can put up a heavy curtain, and I can see that the light on one side of the curtain is very different than the other side of the curtain. Yet I can still tell there's a certain comparison one to the other. I see one comes from the other. I was never going to make the lesser light from the greater. Okay, very nice, but they're very similar. It doesn't compare to the way those two lights existed on God's plane before He ever made anything, when it was just Him and His name. There's just nothing that compares to that. Everything was just God-sized, no limits at all. Everything just existed in potential. There was the potential for limit, but no actual limits. Everything was infinite. A little easier usually for most people to think of God as infinite than finite. Something to think about. So, anyway, the creative force that made Atzilus is infinitely different than Atzilus. Even after there is Atzilus, there's no comparison. But the creative force of Bria, even though it's infinitely different than Bria, there's still an error after it's created. Like the Rav and the Talmud are infinitely different. Nevertheless, you can still see what the Rav gave the Talmud is still, you can still kind of trace it back to the way it is in the Rav. You can see how it's still kind of the same thing. It's only different the Keli that it's in. It exists a little differently. The Chachman, the Rebbe, is totally different than Chachman and us. But nevertheless, there is a comparison. It could be something that could be contracted. And I don't say contracted. I actually should be careful there. could make it down to us, so to speak. I should be careful. I could be wrong with that. Maybe the Rebbe is more like Pri Simson. I think since he's Basiv Adam, that he's more like Tzilis. In my head, my words is, obviously when the Rebbe learns the Gemara, it's infinitely different than we learn the Gemara. But if the Rebbe were to explain us the Gemara and use an analogy, the same seichel that's in the Rebbe's head is going to be in our head. Just the way it's going to shine in the Rebbe's mind is going to have some infinite brightness and starkness. It won't be in our mind, but essentially got the same thing. So I think it's like Tzilis to Bria. But I'll leave it to you guys to argue different if you want. It'd be nice to get some comments. Anyway, and the difference the Rebbe is stressing is to make it Tzilis, we had to reach a state where there was nothing there. The creative force reached a place where it just didn't exist, didn't have a name. At Tzilis, we don't have to say that. At Tzilis passes light through a curtain. We have to reach a state where there's this non-existence, where everything has to cease, stop, go back to zero, and start over and make something so different. And I would like to keep going, but I need to hold what things done here. Alright, thank you for learning with me. Have a great day. Let's connect to the Almighty. Let's understand He's here. Even if He looks hidden, He's still here in a very essential way, even if it's completely different than how He is on His own terms. It all came down through many contractions, I'm assuming, so we could be here, have eyes, ideas, and cogitate and figure out a path that will make Him happy and serve Him and give Him glory. And we should be successful with that. You should be successful with all your endeavors. You should find shidduchim, you should find parnasa, you should find peace, you should find Ahavas Yisrael, you should give a lot of tzedakah, you should love your fellow Jews, you should be happy, you should spread light, spread God's Torah, connect to the Rebbe, and make it happen. Shiach now. Alright.